Welcome to the second of these videos on the science of editing comics. My name is Tom Brevoort, and as I explained in the first part of this series, these videos are sort of freely adapted from a talk that I give to our Marvel editors once a year that kind of encapsulates a lot of the basic information that we've learned about the business over the years and that we want to pass on to future generations. And now I will make it available to you at no cost. So getting into things a little more deeply here, it's worth stating right up front that the perspective on all of this stuff is from an editor working in a company like Marvel's or DC or a similar organization where the characters and the underlying intellectual property is owned by the organization. Most of it still applies to creator-owned situations where either the creators themselves or some other creator owns and controls the property. The ideas are more or less the same, but there are some shadings that are more appropriate to a Marvel and DC than it might be to one of these other situations. So with that in mind, let's get into some of the more nuts and bolts aspects of editing comics. The first point, the defining point that I want to make to people is that our belief, and by our I mean Marvel's, and by extension I kind of assume that I mean DC's and Dark Horse's and Image's, everybody's basic fundamental understanding, but certainly at Marvel, and this is a thing that we try very hard to instill in our editors, is that good, relatable, accessible stories lead to good sales, and bad, confusing, impenetrable stories lead to poor sales. That seems like it should be self-evident, but it's not entirely self-evident. Sometimes, there are comics that, for whatever reason, either we individually as editors or as individual readers think are stinky but sell really well, and the opposite is true. The stuff that we think is the best or the most mind-boggling and so forth doesn't capture a wide enough audience. But as a general metric, our belief is if you tell a story well, you tell it clearly and communicatively, you are more likely to engage an audience and you're more likely to get readers. So that's the fundamental, that's the bedrock, that's what everything we do is about. Joe Quesada had a phrase that he used a lot and that he would repeat to the editorial staff, which is, readers vote with their dollars and with their feet, which is to say, a lot of the fans will say a lot of things about the work that's being done, the stories that are being consumed. They're all very impassioned. They're all very invested in certain aspects of the characters and the stories. But ultimately, the best barometer you have for how well your material is connecting with people is, are the readers buying and reading it, or are they going somewhere else and buying and reading or watching or consuming something else? It is very typical for readers to say one thing and to do another. Every fan has got strong opinions. Every fan tends to be fairly vocal about those opinions. And so it's necessary to follow the guidance of what they actually do rather than what they say they're going to do. Petitions are very easy to get people to fill out. You can go online and you can get 100,000 signatures on a petition for literally anything relatively simply. Getting those 100,000 people to buy something is a completely different situation. Understanding the difference between those two ideas is fairly central if you're going to be editing comics. What you want is for people to read and enjoy the stories that you and the creative team that you're shepherding are making. So while it's certainly nice and worthwhile to take on the feedback that readers may give you, don't let that carry undue weight as opposed to what they actually do month in and month out. There's a reason that the best-selling comics are the best-selling comics and that they tend to be the best-selling comics on a steady basis, and that is they are connecting with an audience. Somebody is enjoying them. In addition to what I spelled out last time about what the responsibilities of an editor happen to be, you are also, and this is clearly important, you are the advocate of your creators in dealing with the company, especially in a Marvel or a DC. Typically, creators that work for these companies are scattered all across the globe. It's more true now than ever before, and it's been true for years. People will be working in far-off places, producing stories, scripts and artwork and everything that goes into making a comic for an organization like Marvel. And you, as the editor, are really their point person, their point of contact with the company. And that means that everything you say and do takes on the patina of being the doctrine of the company. What you say goes. You are not merely speaking with your own voice. You are speaking, if you work for Marvel, with the voice of Marvel, and if you work for DC, with the voice of DC, and so forth. Everything that you say takes on a greater weight to these people's minds. In that role, you have effectively two areas that are of particular import. Number one, at Marvel, I stress this like a lunatic, and it's a thing that I take very, very seriously for all of our younger editors, to the point where I've certainly slapped a few people around for dropping the ball on this, which is making sure that your creators get paid. You can do a lot of things as an editor to engender a connection with your creators. You can be a sympathetic ear, you can be a helpful springboard, you can come up with things that they get to take credit for and enhance their reputations. You can get them raises, you can get them promotion and so forth. But the most key thing that you will do every week, week in and week out, is make sure that when the work is turned in, the money comes out the other end. And that's not inconsequential. I really do hold it as the most important thing, if you're working at a major company, that you can be doing for your creators. If you can do that reliably and consistently, day in and day out, week in and month in, creators will want to work with you even more than they want to work with a lot of other editors, simply because you can be trusted to make sure the money is there when it's time to pay the mortgage or the rent, or it's time to put food on the table. You should never lose sight as an editor for a major company that you are responsible for the financial well-being of all of the people that are working under your oversight. Do not fail in this. Make sure people get paid. The second point of responsibility that you have as the editor at a company like this is to shield your creator's work from interference. And by interference, I really just mean the myriad of opinions that everybody at a company like a Marvel or a DC has. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take advice or insight from anybody that might be able to improve what you're doing. A lot of the people that work at these companies have experience, possibly more experience than you do, and they will certainly have insights that you will find valuable in terms of how the material is working, how it's hitting an audience, how it's communicating to the retailers, how it's communicating to the world at large, and what can be done better. But sometimes people also have a lot of opinions that are ill-informed, that don't understand what's being done and why it's being done in a certain way. Because the creators are not always there to advocate for themselves, it falls to you as the editor to be the champion of whatever story it is that you're putting together with your talent. You must speak for it, you must defend it, you must nurture it, and keep it from harm, even if that harm is the best intentioned harm in the world, as it often is. If it results in a crappier comic book and a poorer reading experience for the end user, it must be prevented, and that duty falls to you. Next time, we'll get deeper into some actual nuts and bolts. We'll move a little more from abstract philosophy into some actual hardline stuff, although there will be a whole bunch of philosophy left because we have plenty to say about this. I'm Tom Brevoort. Thanks for watching. See you again.